Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a wonderful opportunity to share such a fundamental part of this sustainable journey. We're going to be talking about mission-driven companies, what it means to be a mission-driven company, with some practical examples from our wonderful panel who are going to share some of their experiences. My name is Joel Blake. I'm the founder and CEO of the GFA Exchange. For those who don't know GFA, we use AI to democratize access to finance to underserved businesses across the world, and evolving a much more sustainable technology approach in order to support those types of businesses. But in terms of our panel today, you are in for an absolute treat, because for me, it's always an honor to meet people who are really focused on mission-driven activity and put it at the heart of their business. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce first Carol Stern, and I'd like to introduce Talal Hassan. But Carol, do you want to just give the audience a little bit of 90 seconds about who you are and what you do?
Sure. First of all, thank you, and it's a privilege to be here. I spent 42 years in the nonprofit sector, running some of the USA's largest nonprofits, as CEO of UNICEF, and then for the Walton family, running their philanthropy, before I arrived at a decision that I could have more impact with investment than I could through philanthropy, and have now come over to your side of the desk.
Welcome.
Great. I'm Talal. I'm the founder and CEO of 4401. We are a carbon removal company. We've developed a technology that allows us to take captured CO2 and turn that CO2 into rock deep underground. From that process, we generate carbon credits, which we can then sell or pass on to people who need to abate their emissions.
Fantastic. I mean, obviously, CO2 into rock, we'll get to that in a moment. But Carol, I'd like to maybe just start with you, because your experience is so vast. But one of the things I think that we've always, we really like to see in terms of researching our panelists and learning a little bit more about yourself, was the fact that your passion for community has led to impact in many, many different ways. Well, the question I'd like to ask you is, what do you think is the secret to building communities? And making sure those communities can manifest impact, both internally inside organizations, but also externally in the world?
So, especially through my role at UNICEF, I had the privilege to work in 45 countries. And I think time and again I saw that when we entered into even response work, without engaging the community, without making it an equal partnership, you couldn't achieve what you could otherwise. You can't come in pejoratively. And I think the same is true for mission investing, mission-driven businesses. We have to work collaboratively with the community to understand their needs. And we also have to define sustainability broader than just climate. Absolutely. It is about the people. It is about equity. It is about access. It is about truly building community. And simultaneously, if we're going to build it out there, we have to build it internally in the businesses we run.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because often sustainable activity is really focused on telling people what they need. Often the beneficiaries are not actually at the table when those strategies or policies or processes are being made. And I think for many of the leaders in the audience, it's something to really consider in terms of your governance processes. How are you really making sure that you're embedding the voice of the people in those strategies? And I know, Talal, for yourself, stakeholder engagement has been absolutely crucial to your organization and your business. But how have you been able to ensure that you've been integrating those needs and the voices of all those diverse stakeholders into your work?
Absolutely. Stakeholder management is really important, especially when you're building the types of projects that we are building. For us, we have two main stakeholders that we put out there. The first one is government, the second one is community. Just to touch on the government one quickly, we need government authorities, everyone to be aligned to be able to build these types of projects. It requires a lot of thought, a lot of regulation. We can't mark our own homework. We have to make sure that there is a regulator there to make sure that what we are doing is safe for the environment. We're not causing any damage. And just to give a story of when we built our first project here in the UAE, the first kickoff meeting we had 5 different stakeholders from different government entities or ministries in the room. And it was truly a very eye-opening experience to have all of those government entities come together here in the UAE and help us make this project a reality was really quite inspiring. On the community side, I mean, just to echo what was said there, community engagement's really important, especially for us. You know, this is a new technology. There's a lot of awareness that needs to go into this. Also, what we are finding is, apart from just engaging with the immediate community around us, we also need to start to go into the universities, which we found to be a very important tool, to show them what we're doing and to even involve them in what we're doing. So that helps with the awareness. And so for us, the community aspect is actually something which we start before we even do anything on the project. We go out there, we get feelers, we understand what challenges there are in the community, what they are looking for, what universities we can work with, how they can help us, and then we pull that all together and just try and get alignment amongst everyone.
I think what I'm hearing there is this sense of collaboration and dare I say, diverse collaboration in bringing those different ideas, those thoughts, and indeed those needs together in a different way. But we also have to be also cognizant of the fact that when we talk about sustainability, we talk about community, people often put it in the charity basket, right? It's something that we'll do down there, we'll help those over there. And I think what we really need to really think about is the fact that the world has evolved, and the most successful businesses are going to be the ones who look at sustainable activity in a truly commercial sense. And if I could come to you, Carol, because I know that's something that you've really looked at in your previous work, and now you've brought into this space, this sense of conscious capitalism, shall we say. What's your views on that?
Well, I can offer you two different examples. You know, in the wake of the storm in Haiti, the earthquake in Haiti, I was then the CEO of UNICEF USA, and I had no staff on the, it was Puerto Rico, the storm in Puerto Rico. I had no staff on the ground in Puerto Rico, and I needed to respond. And that required me to figure out who I could partner with, who I could collaborate, how I could make that happen. And it took a tripartite of a government agency that could clear some of the customs regulations, a UN agency that knew how to respond, and then a company, and at that time it was UPS, that could actually come together with us and figure out how to get things from here to there. And by bringing all three together, we were the first ones on the ground in the remote spots. And we couldn't have done that with philanthropy alone, corporate alone, or with government alone. So that was true collaboration. But when I was working for the Waltons, and I had the privilege to be giving away hundreds of millions of dollars towards climate change related issues, particularly cleaning rivers and oceans, I did begin to see that the investment community was investing in ag tech products that were cleaning those rivers far greater than I was. And so really it was by coming together and learning from each other. And I have the privilege now to sit in a seat where I am exploring how I can use investments for purpose-driven programs without giving up concessions, you know, that you can have purpose and profit. You have to be true to the fact that they have to have equal success factors and be equally important, but that you don't have to give up one for the other.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Even in my own business, you know, we set that up purely on the basis that if you can prove out the commercial opportunities for your partners, then you can shape longer-term strategic investment into the purposes.
I mean, I'm exploring right now, for example, the disability community, which in the United States alone is a $75 billion market. And when you bring health to it, that's a $500 billion market. And yet it is a community that has been underinvested in.
It's very interesting you talk about, you know, a sense of communities and the way you get different people to work together and how you can help them to be more innovative. And I think, Talal, just the very idea of turning CO2 into rock, it absolutely blows my mind, and I'm sure it does for the audience as well. But how has that sense, again, that sense of innovation really shaped what would be, in many people's eyes, a very abstract idea? You know, how have you been able to leverage innovation in that way?
Yeah. So no one's ever done what we've done before in this particular type of rock. So we take a rock called peridotite. This rock comes up to the surface in certain parts of the world. The UAE and Oman happen to be very rich in this type of rock, and no one had ever drilled or injected or mineralized CO2 in this type of rock. So we really were kind of world leaders in this. And it was very interesting because, typically, I'm from the region, I'm from Oman. Typically, we are importers of technology when it comes to this region. Historically, we've imported technology, and that's how it's gone. And so to have a technology that we've developed ourselves in region has proved a bit of a challenge, actually, getting that acceptance that, hey, look, we've done this ourselves, we've patented this, we have multiple patents, we have some of the leading geologists in the world working on this problem with us, and getting that confidence. And so we started with really small pilots. Our first pilot was in the height of COVID, where everyone was at home sheltering. We were a small group of us in the mountains, drilling a hole into these rocks and injecting CO2, captured CO2 into these rocks. So it really was an element of challenging the status quo, and it's been great now to see, especially here in Abu Dhabi at Hub 71, more of these technological solutions coming to light, more people believing that they can do this and that they can really challenge the status quo. And there's an interesting concept here where I genuinely do believe that with climate tech, it's probably the first technology challenge that has been properly decentralized. So typically you have the meccas of technology. Typically that would be sat in Silicon Valley, and climate tech is the first sector that I've seen where you are getting companies from all over the world coming up with cutting technology and are able to compete with people in Silicon Valley and raise funds like as if they were an international startup.
No, I really truly respect that, and something you were saying there about starting small. You start with a pilot, you build that confidence, you prove out the value and the impact, and then you scale that over time. I think that's a really interesting point, and certainly for the audience to take on board. As we start thinking about summarizing, I think one of the key things that I certainly hear from both of you is the importance of really making sure that you are driving success as leaders in your organizations, but you also are taking a seat and a step back when you need to in that kind of servant leadership role. So what have you learned, if you like, and it's a question for both of you really, what have you really learned about your journey so far in terms of being a mission-driven leader, facing challenges, understanding how you have to be agile as a person, let alone agile in your organization to achieve those outcomes? What would you say were probably maybe one lesson that you've learned from that journey? If I could come to yourself, Carol.
I think you have to, as I said earlier, work internally and externally. I had the privilege when I joined LionTree. LionTree has predominantly worked in sports media and entertainment, but our founder, Aryeh Berkoff, challenged me to make the legacy of the company more than the fields we work in. And he gave me the time to do the homework and the research and to get to know our teams in our offices around the world so that I could understand our culture and our value and what might need to shift or not shift, and then stay true to it in what we would then go out and do.
Yeah, that culture aspect is really
so
important.
So it's the internal work as well as the external work, and that also ensuring that your organization is brought along with what you choose to do that makes you mission-driven.
Fantastic. Yeah, culture, value, sticking to that, being authentic to that is really important.
Exactly.
Salah.
I think if I had to pick one, there's a lot of lessons learned over these last 4.5 years. If I had to pick one, it would be people. The importance of people, especially in this journey that we're in. We're building something that no one has ever built before. It's what we call in the tech sphere is a white space. And just to have the right people to come in with that open mindset, with no ego, to know that we are building the plane as we are flying, pretty much, and to come in with a very open attitude, being open to feedback, being open to learning, asking questions. Curiosity. It's something which just constantly comes up where we'll get told, or someone will say, "Oh, we can't do this." And it's like, "Why can't we do it?" "Oh, because it's not been done before." And it's like, well, that's not a reason. So let's push that and explore that. So I've really feel that people is the biggest driver for us, and I think for this sector as well moving forward.
I think what I'm hearing there is that sense of vulnerability. We often see vulnerability as a negative, but as a mission-driven leader, it's actually a strength because it builds the authenticity, it reinforces the culture and values, and enables you to really come together as a unified group to achieve that purpose. So just in closing, I wonder if I can ask you just what are you currently working on? Is there one kind of thing, mission activity that you're working on at the moment that you'd just like to share with the audience, just to kind of really accentuate what this actually really means?
Sure. So we continue to inject captured CO2 here in the UAE. We started during COP28 with a pilot project with ADNOC. That was the first direct air capture to mineralization project in the whole of Asia, and one of very few in the world. We did that using seawater, which was the first time anyone has ever done that. We've now expanded that site, so as of recently, we've just started injecting on the expanded site, and that is something which we are continuing to build up here in the UAE.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you the very best of luck there, absolutely. And Carol, what were you working on?
As I mentioned the disability market, and as the mom of a child who had a disability, I'm very familiar with the lack of pace of innovation in medicine until recently, and obviously the impact on AI in particular on medicine has been phenomenal. So at LionTree, we are exploring that market. We're exploring, what we could do to have impact. But I think if I had a message here today, I would just kind of wrap up with a little story. I mean, as I mentioned, I worked in 45 countries, and at the time, I had the privilege to work in the Zaatari camp, and when you work in the refugee camps, it's a long day, and you get up early and you work all day, and there are always kids when you work for UNICEF hanging on to you. It's like the elephant walk. You've got kids all over you. But there's always some shy kids who walk behind you. And on this particular day in the camp, I had a child, she was probably 12 or 13 years old. She had a baby on her hip, a younger sibling, and a little boy of about 3 or 4 who followed us all day long. And we had gotten up and started work at about 4 in the morning, they were there. And 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we're wrapping up. We realized we had not eaten all day, which meant these kids had not eaten all day. And I was struck by that. And at one point, we had been helping in a tent teaching women how to breastfeed, and they had these little biscuits. And they wanted us to eat the biscuits, and I was trying very hard not to eat carbs, so I had kind of palmed my biscuit and stuck it in my backpack. So we took the biscuit out, and we gave it to this little 3 or 4-year-old child, expecting him to run off. This was a starving child. He'll take the biscuit, he'll go hide, and he hadn't made eye contact, he just followed me all day long. So for the first time, he looked at me, and he kind of smiled, and he opened up the package, and with no one saying anything, he broke the biscuit in half, and he handed half to the baby.
Wow.
And
Wow.
40 of us wept. I mean, all of us in blue shirts, we all cried. But I share that because it showed me that if a 3 or 4-year-old knew enough to share the biscuit and understand that we could still build a better tomorrow, just imagine what a room like this could do for our world today if we were all mission-driven.
I cannot think of a more fitting story to finish such an inspiring, empowering conversation on. Please join me in saying thank you to our panel, Carol, Talal, and please, in terms of your work and what you do, think about what biscuit you can give to somebody else. Thank you very much indeed.